Welcome to your introduction to equality, diversity, and inclusion. In our ever evolving world, it is important that we foster an inclusive and diverse workplace and create an environment where every individual feels valued, respected, and empowered. This equality, diversity, and inclusion training, which will also be referred to EDI throughout the training, is more than just a training. It's a commitment to building a workplace where everyone, regardless of their background, identity, or experiences, can thrive. Throughout this training, we will explore the fundamental principles of equality, equity, and diversity and highlight the significance of fostering an inclusive culture. By gaining a deeper understanding of these elements, we aim to not only meet legal and ethical standards, but to go beyond, creating a workplace where individuals can bring their authentic selves to work every day. Our goal is to empower you with knowledge, skills, and attitudes needed to contribute actively to an inclusive workplace. So let's get started. Why are we here today? We want to develop your awareness of the importance of equality, equity, diversity, and inclusion in the workplace. We want to inform you of what the law expects from us pertaining to EDI and to promote a workplace free from discrimination and harassment. We want to equip you with the knowledge and skills necessary to foster a more inclusive workplace. By the end of the training, we hope you will better understand the importance of EDI and how the law protects from discrimination. Communicate inclusively, considering the perspectives of your colleagues using respectful language, and advocate for EDI and actively take part in building this at Taylor's Legal. Part 1 of this training aims to establish the foundations. How do we define equality, equity, diversity, and inclusion, and why we should aim to foster this type of workplace? Part 2 aims to ensure we are aware of and are compliant with legal and ethical standards relating to equality and inclusion. We will also look at some key definitions. We all know the words discrimination, harassment, but how do we define them in relation to the law? In part 3, we unpack bias and stereotypes, their relevance, and the barriers that prevent us from creating an inclusive workplace. And finally, in part 4, it brings us back to what we want you to take away from this training. What can we or you do to create an inclusive workplace? So let's get started. This section introduces EDI to ensure we have a good understanding of key definitions, and we will also go over why we should foster this inclusive environment. Firstly, we want to be clear on the definitions of equality, equity, diversity, and inclusion. Equality means offering the same rights and opportunities to everyone. Equity means offering those rights and opportunities fairly, which means catering to people's differences so they are given fair access to those opportunities. Diversity is understanding that each person is unique and we should embrace the range of their differences, including beliefs, abilities, values, backgrounds, identities, and so on. And inclusion is an extension of all of the above, where all people from all walks of life have the right to be included, respected, and appreciated as valued members. There are no exceptions. Put this into a practical example. The leadership team invites the whole company out for a coffee. This is an example of inclusion because everyone has been invited. A number of people accept the invite, and you're all off to the coffee shop. Once arrived, the barista asks each one of you in turn, what would you like to order? This is an example of equality, as everyone has been offered the same opportunity to place their drinks order from the same menu. Then, a member of your team informs the barista they would like a coffee but are lactose intolerant. This demonstrates equity, where the barista offers alternative choices of milk or other drinks which can cater to their intolerance. Now, everyone has an equal opportunity and a fair access to that opportunity. A free drink on the company and maybe a cheeky pastry. Finally, we look at diversity, which is represented in the order itself. 2 cappuccinos, 1 skinny latte, 1 hot chocolate, 2 English breakfast teas, 1 hot water with lemon, 1 Americano, and 1 Americano decaf. Once the drinks arrived, none of you, not even for a moment, probably even considered there was anything unusual about the differences in your drink choices. No one makes a comment or even thinks anything of it. Now imagine a world where we all accept each other's differences as naturally as we accept each other's drink orders. The reality is, many of us struggle to accept the things that make someone different from us, and instead, we allow these differences to separate us. Someone else's uniqueness is as important as ours. Even though we are different, we are all people and we are all equal. So we want to reinforce today the importance of treating each and every person as our equal, so for equal and legal reasons, and how we can put this into practice to building that inclusive workplace at Taylor's Legal. Creating an inclusive workplace is the responsibility of both the company and its employees. Imagine a place where everyone feels valued, respected, and treated with kindness. You're encouraged to take breaks, take your holidays, your ideas are welcomed and listened to. Your mental health matters, your physical health matters, and your differences are taken into account. You and your colleagues feel empowered to bring your true selves to work without fear of judgment. Your contributions are recognized and your wins are celebrated. You have equal opportunities to develop and progress in your career. You feel safe to voice your opinions and collaborate to innovate. And overall, you're happy to be at work and enjoy what you do and who you do it with. The list would go on. This is why it's so important to foster an inclusive environment in the workplace. We spend a lot of our times with our employers and colleagues, so why not make it a place where you and everyone around you can thrive as an individual and as a collective? In part one, we explored the foundations of EDI and we looked at how building an inclusive workplace can impact your personal journey at work. As much as we want to focus on these elements to build a better future for ourselves, our team members, and our company, it is important that we are aware of and compliant with legal and ethical standards related to equality and inclusion. Part two of this session looks at just that, building our awareness and understanding on what the law says about discrimination so we know our rights and responsibilities. So let's begin. The Equality Act came into force in 2010 to better tackle disadvantage and discrimination. It legally protects people from discrimination in the workplace specific to the 9 protected characteristics. We will dive a little more on the definitions of discrimination on the next slide, but in short, discrimination means treating someone less favorably than someone else because they have one of these protected characteristics. The characteristics are sex, gender reassignment, sexual orientation, race, disability, marriage or civil partnership, religion or belief, pregnancy and maternity, and age. Less favorable treatment can be anything that puts someone with a protected characteristic at a disadvantage compared to somebody who does not have that characteristic. There are a few main types of unlawful discrimination that you need to be aware of. These are direct discrimination, when someone treats someone else less favorably than they treat others because of a protected characteristic. Direct discrimination by association, when an employee is discriminated against not because of a protected characteristic they have, but because of a protected characteristic of someone they are associated with. Indirect discrimination. This is often less obvious but can happen when a working practice policy or rule is the same for everyone, but someone with a protected characteristic is put to a disadvantage. Discrimination by perception. This happens when a person is discriminated against because they are thought to have a particular protected characteristic when in fact they do not. Discrimination can also come in form of harassment. This is offensive and unwanted behavior and can make someone feel intimidated, pressurized, degraded, or humiliated. The behavior is usually linked to having a connection to a protected characteristic. Harassment can be verbal, written, or physical. For example, your colleague often makes what they think are harmless jokes about another colleague, but the recipient may feel offended or humiliated. So, even though the harasser may not realize their actions are upsetting someone, the important thing to remember is it is all about how the recipient feels. These protections are designed to promote equal opportunities and prevent unfair treatment in the workplace. You can easily deep dive into these for a lot of detail, but for the purpose of this training, here is a quick overview of each one. Sex. Protection against discrimination based on sex ensures equal treatment regardless of gender. Race. Protection against discrimination based on race, ethnicity, or nationality ensures that individuals are treated fairly regardless of their racial or ethnic background. Religion or belief. Discrimination based on belief, including the absence of a belief, is prohibited. Gender reassignment. Individuals who have undergone or undergoing or intend to undergo a process of gender reassignment are protected against discrimination. Disability. People with physical or mental impairments that have a substantial and long term adverse effect on their ability to carry out normal day to day activities are also protected against discrimination. Pregnancy and maternity. Pregnant individuals and those on maternity leave are protected against discrimination. This includes protection against unfair treatment in the workplace and during the recruitment process. Sexual orientation. Individuals of all sexual orientations are protected against discrimination. This ensures that individuals are treated fairly and without prejudice based on their sexual orientation. Marriage or civil partnership. Discrimination based on marital status or civil partnership status is prohibited and ensures that individuals in different marital or partnership statuses receive equal treatment. Age. Individuals of all ages are protected against discrimination. This includes both younger and older individuals. I appreciate that there is a lot of information to take in. We are halfway through the training, so now would be a good time to take a break if you wish. When you are ready, we can continue to the second half of the training. In part 3, we introduce bias and stereotypes. There should be zero tolerance when it comes to discrimination and harassment of any kind, but it is important to understand and recognize where they may stem from. A lot of these behaviors start with ignorance and biases, so learning and building your awareness are key to improving both areas. Biases can be defined as the attitudes or stereotypes that affect our understanding, decisions, and actions. We can have a fixed thought or belief about a thing, a person, or a group, which can lead to unfair treatment. It's often based on past experiences and usually inaccurate because when we stereotype, we do not look at the facts. Put bluntly, everyone is a little bit biased, which means we prefer certain things over others. We all have them, and it does not make us a bad person, but when certain biases go unchecked, they can cause us to act in harmful ways, sometimes without us meaning to. We can have both explicit and implicit bias. You may already know implicit bias as it is commonly referred to as unconscious bias. Unconscious biases are usually the most concerning because they are the ones we do not recognize we have. By challenging ourselves to identify and overcome our unconscious bias and to help others recognize theirs, we can start to pave the way for a better working environment and a more inclusive environment. Thinking about the biases in general, here are some examples of stereotypes you may know of, which links back to one of the protected characteristics. He is a little older, so he might find it difficult to learn the new software. She's too young to be a lawyer. We can't promote her now, she told me she's pregnant. Enjoy your holiday, said to a colleague leaving for maternity leave. Boys don't cry. Girls are more perfectionists and better at work. Let's take gender bias as well as an example, as this can be quite prominent in many professionals. Female lawyers can be mistaken for somebody other than the lawyer on the case. Female pilots may be mistaken for flight attendants, or male nurses frequently are mistaken for the doctors. The list can go on. So, how do we overcome our unconscious bias? Firstly, and sometimes the hardest step, is that we must be willing to admit we have biases. We need to go against our gut instincts to instead focus on asking ourselves questions before forming an opinion. Here is a tool to help us to improve this, and it is called ACT. A stands for acknowledge. Admit to yourself you hold a certain thought or belief. C stands for challenge. You can challenge your thought by asking yourself, is what I think actually true? Is it always true? And what evidence do I have? And finally, T. T stands for train. Train your brain to acknowledge and challenge your thoughts before you act. Try this exercise now. We're going to pause for 2 minutes. Take these 2 minutes and have a think of a time you may have stereotyped someone or something and apply ACT to it. Do you think this exercise might have caused you to act differently in that situation? Take this time now. Perhaps it was a situation at work, or it could have been something that happened in your personal life. You might find it easier if you write them down. You've got 1 minute left. You've got 30 seconds. You may wonder why we've built in these 2 minutes within this training, but sometimes when we say an exercise and we say to take your time later to do it, and don't have the time to actually do it. So we're hoping that by building it into this training, it gives you those 2 minutes to really think about how you could apply ACT. And usually doing this helps us to understand that it is our bias influencing our actions, so we can now move on and make a better decision using this tool. Now, the bias realm is its own beast, which warrants its own personal time, but it is important for us to touch on these during this training to understand what already exists within us as a barrier to achieve a more inclusive workplace and reason why we can act in harmful ways without intending to. And finally, we've arrived at part 4. So we've looked at key definitions, why we should foster an inclusive culture, our legal responsibility, and the barriers we face when it comes to bias and stereotypes. So the next part is the how. How can we create an inclusive workplace to ensure everyone is treated fairly and with respect? And how can we embed this in our day to day? We've come up with 10 ways to help you to contribute to more inclusive workplace. The first is to cultivate awareness, stay informed about EDI principles, and engage in workshops such as these. It's important that we keep learning and educating ourselves. The second is to celebrate diversity. Get to know your colleagues, ask questions, and stay open about learning about each other's differences. Ask questions, seek to understand and empathize with different viewpoints and perspectives. Do not talk over each other or dismiss each other's opinions. Speak up if you see negative comments or behavior. Think about how you would do this in a workplace setting, perhaps taking the person to the side instead of addressing them in the middle of the office. Challenge. Challenge your own biases and encourage others to do the same. Practice active listening. Listen to others with intent. Do not spend the time thinking about a response that you're going to give to what they are saying. Cultivate allyship. Be an ally to colleagues from underrepresented groups. Create a safe space in meetings and social events and invite everyone to share their views and perspectives. Create an opportunity for everyone to contribute and be heard. Not everyone can brainstorm ideas on the spot. If you want to encourage collaboration and innovation, think about ways for people to give you their input in a way they are comfortable to do so. This is key also for management, but for us as individuals when we're running team meetings. Lead by example through your communication and your actions. As employees representing Taylor's Legal, you need to take responsibility for the part you can each play in creating that inclusive workplace. Start small and keep learning. Here are some quick tools for your toolbox when it comes to EDI. Keep an open mind. Listen to other people's stories. Put yourself in other people's shoes and ask yourself, what if that was me? Allow your opinions to change for the better. Use the ACT tool that we talked about earlier in this training. Respect, accept, and celebrate each other. For any additional questions, feel free to direct this to the HR team. Thank you for listening.